I'm sorry.
If you guys don't get it passed by tomorrow, and we do a meeting on the 30th, probably 6:30.
Oh yeah, probably 6:30 closed session and then 7 o'clock. Yeah. We've got options. Testing in the room. Do we have an echo? We do have an echo. Nisa, is your mic off? Oh.
How do I turn the volume on this down?
Testing. Okay, the echo is gone. Okay. Councilmember Meadows, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Let me come on video. Okay.
Okay, hello and welcome. It is 7 o'clock on Monday, October 21st, 2024. This is a special meeting of the Los Altos City Council. Earlier today, the council met in closed session. The only reportable action was granting Councilmember Meadows' request to appear remotely pursuant to AB 2449? Yes, 2449, okay. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. Madam Assistant City Clerk, would you please establish quorum?
Let's start with Councilmember Meadows. Councilmember Meadows.
Present?
Councilmember Feiger.
Here.
Councilmember Liang.
Here.
Vice Mayor Daley.
Here.
Mayor Weinberg.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I think there's no staff presentation, so I will follow the regular order as much as possible. If there are any questions from the council to staff or to our districting council, now would be the time. Otherwise, I will go to public comment. So I will look at my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Liang.
Thank you. I just, when I pulled up some information on the counter today, I noticed there's a new map. But in my packet or in the packet on the agenda, I didn't notice this new map. Can you explain to me, is this map open to be considered? And help me understand, because I would have loved to have it, had the opportunity to have had public comment given on this as well. So if someone can explain, how this came about, I would appreciate it.
Just for clarification, Councilmember, you're referring to the map that has ID 254653, quote, 3 new maps. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Just want to have a clear record on that.
And what's your question, Councilmember Liang? Because I know this map. So it's been on the city website for at least 7 days. I specifically asked staff to include it as a copy for this meeting.
So I think what I've seen it as in the past is F4, as an F4 map. But we're calling it a new map tonight. But also in the agenda packet, it wasn't listed as one of the maps to be considered. And so help me understand, because there's a process in which,
Yes.
I would have appreciated that the public understand serious consideration for these maps are these items. And then we could have had people who could have really understood what the maps are that is really going to be discussed and provide a public comment.
Yes, so for tonight's meeting, I believe that all maps that were previously posted for at least 7 days can be considered at tonight's meeting. I would ask staff to provide an answer as to whether this was at least on the city's website for 7 days.
So I know this map was posted for 7 days. The Assistant City Manager's at the Finance Commission right now. He's the one that compiled the maps. I do remember the request, so it is in order. Council may consider any maps tonight that have been previously posted for at least 7 days. Council may also change maps, consider new maps tonight. So however council wants to proceed, it's at the pleasure of council.
Thank you. And just for clarification, and any map that has been on Districtor for at least 7 days is a map that we can consider tonight, correct?
As long as it's also been posted to the city's website, yes,
Okay, so it has to have been to the city's website, not just Districtor.
correct.
Okay. Now, if there is a map that has not been published on the city's website for the last 7 days, can we here this evening redraw the map, give it another name, and consider it a map that we have drawn tonight?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Councilmember Liang, did you have any other questions?
Yes, because I think how it's done or posted on the study session, it wasn't clear. And then I think how it is on Districtor is the maps that are highlighted on the above section. So I think I'm a little confused. So I just needed to better understand this because I think when I spoke to the public, they were thinking that the maps that were highlighted from the last meeting, because it was discussed that these are the maps that's for serious consideration. And it wasn't made clear that all other maps can be introduced or we are considering this map. So I think that when I look at the study session website,
Councilmember Liang, just to try to move us along, I think what you're saying is you are concerned that the breadth of the agenda that was published for tonight does not allow us to consider other maps. Is that the point you're trying to make?
it's not that it's not considering other maps. It wasn't for serious consideration as the other four.
So I think the only way I can respond to that is at the conclusion of the last meeting, it was specifically asked if council could consider maps as long as they've been posted for 7 days. The answer to that was yes. So if one did not get into the packet, that would not preclude council from considering it because it had been posted earlier or changing it or doing, again, what is at the council pleasure tonight.
And then, Madam City Attorney, I'll just look to you. Is it your opinion that our agenda is broad enough for tonight's meeting that we can consider more than just the 4 maps that Councilmember Liang was referring to?
Yes, I believe so. They've been, my biggest concern would be if they were not posted before, the 7 days.
Thank
That
you.
would be my concern.
Councilmember Liang, do you have any other questions?
So you're saying that as long as so everything should be posted on the study session website and every map that we're considering tonight should be on the study session website, just to clarify.
No, it was about the maps that were supposed to be redrawn and posted 7 days before this hearing. These other ones were also included in the packet, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure we're all clear on the process and the understanding of this, because when people had spoken to me about it, I want to make sure that they are made aware of our process.
Do you have any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Do any other council members have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment in just a moment. As before, public comment will be untimed. but there are a couple of remarks that I would like to make first. When this is brought back to council, I am going to give my initial thoughts on what I think about what the council should do in terms of which districts would be up for election in 2 years and which in 4 years. And I'm also going to give my thoughts on whether or not we should have a residency requirement. Those are not decisions that we have to make tonight, but I am curious what my colleagues are thinking. I'm curious what members of the public are thinking, if they've had time to sort of let that percolate. I just want to put that out there. You know, we're spending a lot of time focusing on boundaries, and of course, that should be what is dictating the way the meetings are going. But I think it would be useful for us to at least start talking about those other issues as well. So when we're ready to actually vote on something, we can go forward with that. There was a couple of comments in our last several meetings that have disturbed me. And these are comments from the public. And that has to do with the use of the word gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is defined as the practice of dividing or arranging a territorial unit into election districts in a way that gives one political party an unfair advantage in elections. I'm taking that definition from the Merriam-Webster.com website. Obviously, we are nonpartisan Los Altos, but I think one could say that if maps are being drawn in order to benefit one special interest over another, that would qualify as gerrymandering. Gerrymandering does not necessarily mean that you have a district that is not compact, it is long, there are curves, it does not look aesthetically pleasing. Gerrymandering means that that district was drawn for an improper purpose. Now, when you're giving your public comments, of course, you have freedom of speech. And if you believe that gerrymandering is taking place, I welcome you to express that. But I would request that members of the public refrain from using the word unless you really do believe that there is malintention behind the drafting of districts. And then with that, I will open it up to public comment. So, Madam City Clerk? Do we have any cards? Looks like they're... Backbenchers are working on it. Okay.
Freddie Wheeler.
Good evening. Here we are again. But I'm really glad that we are here again because with the extra meetings, we have solved at least the problems for the Highlands and Grant Park. And so I really appreciate that. Map C2 and map F2A keep Highlands and Grant Park intact. And I've been in communication with neighbors from Grant Park and Highlands. And the person who is kind of heading up the Grant Park effort is very happy. I'm very happy that Highlands people that I've spoken to are very happy with these two maps because we're intact, our neighborhoods. And so thank you, because this really solves what could have been a big problem for both neighborhoods, especially if one got their neighborhood intact at the expense of the other one. So this way, it's a win-win. The other thing that I wanted to, again, urge that you do, if you get to deciding which districts go first in 2026 tonight, then I want to urge that, and I understand if you do it in a separate motion, wherever she went, I think, okay, that I spoke to her and she said that would work, that you could move to have the district elections in the district that Pete's in and the district that Nisa's in 2026. So that seems like the most common sense thing to do, because you would be running again and you would be termed out and someone would need to take your place. So I would hope you would consider doing that. And then there's a third thing that you have to decide. What is it? I've forgotten.
Residency.
Residency, okay. I would also urge you to have some residency. I see that it looks like you're considering 30 days before they submit their nomination packet or papers, and that's fine. I mean, I think 6 months would be better because they would know the district a little better, but at least some residency would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to look for clarification. I know that we are not allowed to consider incumbency in terms of drafting, in terms of drawing districts. In terms of deciding what district goes up for election next, can we consider what members are termed out at the next election? Or is that something that we're not allowed to consider?
So you would be able to do that, but it has to be on a separate motion. So if you were hoping to make one motion related to the adoption of the districts as well as the residency requirement, you couldn't, or the incumbency, and which district would be up for election first, you wouldn't be able to do it on one motion. They would have to be bifurcated.
Okay, can I get a little more clarification on procedure then? Because what the council had before us at the last meeting and what we have before us in our packet for tomorrow night's meeting are ordinances. There's a regular ordinance and there's an urgency ordinance. And there are blanks in the ordinance regarding the map, the district numbers that will be up for re-election in 2 years, and whether there would be a residency requirement. Are you saying we have to have a separate motion on each of those three, which then get plugged into the ordinance, which then gets voted upon?
So the residency requirement could be considered on the same motion, but it's the considering the sequence of elections, which district would be up. If you wanted to consider incumbency, that would have to be on a separate motion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next public speaker, please.
Eric Steinley.
I want to begin by seconding what Freddie said. And then I want to say, to pick B or not to pick B, that is the question. I have provided you with my answer, and I look forward to hearing your response. Thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Joe Beninado.
Good evening. Speaking as a resident, not as a commissioner. For the record, I live in District 3, and I don't think there's been any debate from anybody around the many, many variations of how District 3 will be drawn. So there are a couple of maps that I think do disservice to the residents inside of District 3, not near where I live, but near Loyola and Mackenzie, boundaries being drawn right at some points of interest in our town. With regards to the comment about gerrymandering, I would like to address it. Oxford defines it as achieving a result by manipulating the boundaries of an electoral constituency. Doesn't mention Democrat or Republican or anything else. And you know, for those who aren't aware, I feel like I'm Mr. Steinley right now. The origin of this is from Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, combined with the word salamander. And the reason salamander is important is because it was the shape of the districts looked like a salamander because they were oddly formed. If you look at the District 4 as drawn in C2 and F2A, it surrounds District 5 both on the north as well as on the south, kind of goes around it. And I believe Mr. Mayor pointed out the difference between, you know, Cristo Rey versus someone up on Covington, Block Intermediate School, the boundary in C2 and F2A goes right below where Block is located. And so the residents who live in that neighborhood will be split. So to me, it feels like there were many, many public comments from residents talking about, please pick C2 or F2A because I live in Grant Park. And while I recognize that Grant Park is a community of interest, it is not the only community of interest, nor do I think it is it the most important community of interest in the town. So to perhaps draw a line right where Block is, or right where Loyola is, or right where Mackenzie is, or there are many other examples where we've given deference to school boundaries, for example, Los Altos High, feels like preferring one area because they've spoken up a lot versus another. So I know there is momentum to go in that direction because there's a lot of feedback coming from Grant Park. I personally think objectively, not because it does anything to my location or our district, because we're going to be, there are lines going to be drawn in District 3 that are going to be problematic. But having spent hours and hours in this, and the mayor knows how much time I've spent, as well as some of the other council members, it is really difficult to get within that 10% window and draw reasonable districts that work for everybody. We're not going to be able to solve it for everybody. But it felt to me like F2 was the map that came closest to keeping areas together as much as possible, knowing that not every street is going to be included everywhere. And anywhere we draw a line, there are going to be neighbors on one side of the street who are going to be in a different district than the neighbors across the street. And I would argue that's more impactful on those neighbors who know each other than neighbors who live 10 blocks away from each other who happen to not be in the same district. So I'll end it there. I know how difficult this is for all of you because I've seen the challenges of trying to get there, and having spent another couple of hours this week, it's next to impossible to please everybody. So I hope you offend the least people possible is probably the best I can do at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janine Valadez.
Hello, speaking as a member of the public, not as a commissioner. My comments are brief. I think the efforts to change the bottom two districts are well done. Kudos to demographers and the public who weighed in. For that reason, I favor F2A. I understand that their community favors either F2A or C2, but I prefer F2A because just the nature of the districts, and I like the fact that that Old Town gets differentiated a little bit in F2A. As to comments of gerrymandering, I know that I was uncomfortable with the original District 1, which was long and skinny, but I didn't call it gerrymandering. It doesn't meet those requirements, although the history is correct, the origin of the word. We can have semantic discussions on that. I think the way the maps have evolved is a very good direction. I understand the comments about District 3, but what I will say about the block community is that, most people don't get attached to their middle school community as much as they do to their elementary and to their high school communities. So if something has to give, maybe that's it. Of course, I don't live there. I'll be up in the northmost district, which has evolved quite a bit. So anyways, F2A is my configuration. Thank you.
No more speaker cards.
All right. Would anyone else like to speak tonight? Okay, then with that, I will close public comment. Let me start by giving my thoughts on residency and which districts should go in 2 years. I do think we should have a residency requirement. We've seen other cities of our size where they've actually had experiences where no one has decided to run for council. I don't think any of us want to see a situation where nobody is running, so somebody who wants to be on the council signs a lease in an apartment in another district the day before papers have to be filed, and then boom, they're on council because they were unchallenged in that district. So I would favor at least a 30-day residency requirement. I know that our council was uncomfortable having it much more than that. Depending on what other council members feel, I'm open to discussing having it longer, but I do believe that having some kind of a residency requirement would serve the city well. In terms of what two districts should be up for election in 2026, Ms. Wheeler's comments make a lot of sense. You have one council member who is going to be termed out. You have another one who will be up for reelection should he decide to run. So why not have those two districts be the ones that are up in 2 years? It makes sense for 2026, but I wonder if it makes sense beyond that. If we follow that recommendation, that means in non-presidential years, the southernmost district in the city and the northernmost district in the city would be up for election. And then the middle 3 districts of the city would be up for election during presidential years. Is it in the best interest of the city long-term to have the 2 outside extreme and then have the 3 compressed together go? I'm not sure that 10, 15, 20 years from now, that's necessarily the best. Where I am right now in terms of what districts I think should be up in 2024, I would make it either districts 1 and 2 or districts 4 and 5. And my thought is this: if you have 2 districts that are right next to each other up in one election cycle, and then the other 3 districts that are next to each other also up, you've accomplished a couple of things. One, I think there's a little less confusion because even though people in different districts are voting for different candidates, districts that are close to one another where there's a race, even if it's not of the same candidates, I think residents will see, okay, well, there's an election coming up. There's something going on. I think it's a little bit less confusing than here there's an election and then further away there's an election, what's going on in the middle. The other thing is, there could be issues that really impact regions of the city. And if districts 1 and 2 are both up for election at the same time, it gives the opportunity for the north part of the city to maybe put together a slate, even if it's not a slate, to have candidates running who are in the same general region and considering the same sorts of issues. I think that would be better for the city long term, especially if there's something major that happens and residents want to come together and elect candidates who are going to work on those issues, whatever they might be in the future. So those are my thoughts on those 2 issues. I'm not ensconced in either one of them. I'm just throwing out where my mind is right now on those. Vice Mayor.
I don't favor a residency requirement because of the scenario that you mentioned. I think it would be better to have a Los Alton who at the last minute decides to move so that they can represent a district than to have no candidates from that district, period. So I don't think a residency requirement does any good for the city. And in fact, I think it's deleterious in that particular instance. And frankly, I think any candidate who is a latecomer to a district faces a structural disadvantage in that district anyway. And the notion of districting, by its very nature, more or less addresses the sort of carpetbagging kind of phenomenon by giving strength to candidates who are established in the district that they're running from, who have a record of perhaps volunteering or other public service or working with the schools or something else. So I actually don't think that at this time we should implement a residency requirement. We may decide after we've gone through an election cycle that a 30-day residency requirement or a 6-month residency requirement makes some sense, but I would prefer that we hold off on the residency requirement. I also disagree with the mayor respectfully on whether or not we should have, I frankly think that in each election cycle, we should have a southern district and a northern district up for grabs. And that way, both the off-cycle elections, non-presidential cycle, as well as the presidential cycle, really it will be the entire city that is at issue in the election. Whereas if we split it the way the mayor suggested, we'll have one election cycle where everybody in the north is engaged and nobody in the south is engaged whatsoever. And therefore topics that pertain to the whole city will get short shrift. So my preference would be to have a northern district and a southern district in the non-presidential election year, and then have the other 3 districts in the presidential election year. We have better turnout in presidential election years, so I think it makes sense to have the 3 districts in that particular year. As to which districts go first, I do think it makes sense to have the district that I'm in up in 2026. However, it actually doesn't matter whether or not the northern district that we choose is the district that Nisa lives in. In fact, totally irrelevant because she's termed out. And we will have another council member as well, and the 3 candidates that are running for that open seat, one of them lives in District 1, another one lives in District 2, and I don't know where the third one lives. But, if we make a decision based on where the current council members live, that becomes, kind of a tainted decision as soon as the election occurs and we have a new member. So I don't think we should decide which northern district to bring forward for election in 2026 based on, where the council members live. I think we should make that decision based on perhaps one of the criteria that the mayor mentioned, which is, do you pair, for example, 1 and 4 in 2026? Or do you pair 1 and 5 or 5 and 2 or 2 and 4, whatever? So we can make that decision based on just basically, I think we should make the decision based on what's going to lead to elections that put the most critical issues in front of the voters in ways that they can have an impact on how the city is run.
Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Vice Mayor. So I'll start with what districts should go forward in 2026, and I agree mostly with what the Vice Mayor said. I think we're better served if we have a district in the northern side of Los Altos and a district on the southern side of Los Altos at the same time, so we have the full city engaged, at least on both ends. I also don't think we should consider where myself and the Vice Mayor live today. There are council members who live in the same district with me based on the map, Mayor, and the Vice Mayor lives in the district with another council member. And council members can always move to other districts. We have no idea where any of us will be living next year or in 2026. And so I really don't think we should be making a decision based on who will be termed out and who is up for re-election in 2026. Someone mentioned, I think at the last meeting, the idea, I don't know if it was Freddie, the idea of doing odd and even numbers, and I actually like that. And I do agree that for 2026, in a non-presidential year, we should have 2 districts. And so the big presidential year, let's do 3 districts. And so I would support, 2 and 4, regardless of who lives there. 2 and 4 for 2026 and 1, 3, 5 for 2028. So that's what I would support with regards to what districts go forward in 2 years. With regards to the residency requirement, I'm more aligned with the mayor on this. I do think that we should have a residency requirement. I don't feel strongly if it's 30 days or 45 days. But I do think we should have a residency requirement. So I can support you, Mayor, for making it 30 days. But I think there's so much benefit to having someone who has at least lived in the district for a certain number of days before they run for office. Even to Freddie's point that, longer would obviously give them more familiarity with the district, the issues the district is facing. I think 30 days gives them some exposure to the issues and the neighborhoods within the district for them to somewhat represent the district, as opposed to having someone move in one day before papers are due and realizing no one has filed, decides, oh, here's my opportunity to get on council. So I support a residency requirement. I'm comfortable with 30 days. With regard to the districts, the order in which we follow, I am for 2-4, 2026, 1-3-5, 2028. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Meadows.
All right. My colleagues are all very succinct. I'll try to do my best to do the same. So I actually think I largely align with Councilmember Flagger. I support a 30-day residency requirement. I can see what the vice mayor was saying, but I think the downside to not having a requirement potentially outweighs. And you're right, we might find out different as we go along. I do think we should have 3 districts that are up in a presidential year. We know for a fact that turnout is much higher. So we should get as much engagement as possible and have 3 districts. And I liked Councilmember Flagger's the 2 even numbers in the 2-year the 2 district cycle and then the 3 in the other one. No one has mentioned the CVRA intent, furthering potentially enriching a district. I don't know how that would turn out. I guess it depends on which map we have. But there was some discussion in previous meetings about the fact if there was a map that gave a greater enrichment, then that might be an earlier district. But I do think that the 2 even and the 3 odd is really an objective way to go, so I could support that. I wanted to throw a little ringer in it. I know we've been talking about the districts 1 through 5, with north being 1 and 5 being south. I was going to propose the other way. We know that that some of our friends and neighbors in the south feel they're slighted occasionally. I don't, so I wondered if we should start with 1 being our southernmost district all the way up to 5 in the north, just as a nod for, not implying a numerical value on that. I just wanted to throw that out there. I know that's not been discussed. So that would make what we're usually calling District 5 would be District 1. So I think I've covered all the issues then. If not, please let me know. But otherwise, I think other than the map, that's a whole nother thing.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Liang, do you have any thoughts on residency and which districts would be up for election in 2 years?
Definitely believe in residency requirement. I think 30 days is too short. I'd like more information on the other cities because I know that the other cities have longer requirements. No?
So courts have held that a 30-day residency requirement is constitutional, but have held that 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years are unconstitutional.
Okay, because I thought it was 2 months okay, so I definitely agree with the residency requirement. I want to also feel that it's important that we have a discussion because if we feel that it's a concern for people or that we have a lack of candidates, we should be discussing, like some cities or school districts have done, is subsidizing the filing fees for running. And I think that would help to encourage more people to run as well. So I'm all for residency requirement. As far as the districts, definitely 1 in the north and 1 in the south. It's not based on the council members who are up, because no matter what districts is decided, you can identify and say, you know, since you're up, you just put their name under that district for the next election, like what they did for Foothill De Anza. We had 2 in District 5, but then they just put that other one that was up this year for another district just as a seat holder. So it's not about who lives where, but definitely one north, one south. I believe that the 2 ends should go first and then the 3 middle together, because as we have higher engagement, we can have the discussion of the issues and the schools that are involved in that area that come up as well. So I would say the one in the south and one in the north as well. What was the other point that you were making? So I agreed more with the vice mayor on this, and residency requirement, the districts, and I think that was it.
All right. Thank you all. So now we have new things to think about. Okay, let's start talking about how we're going to draw the lines. Since our last meeting, I went back and I watched the meeting actually twice, and there's a lot of things that I was just uncomfortable with about where we are right now. Let me start by saying there were some. It seems to me that there are some decisions we've made that I think we need to go back and revisit. One of those being that we didn't want to draw lines around major streets to the extent that we could avoid it. And I'm looking at how the maps are looking in the northern part of the city, and in really looking at these maps, I think that decision was a mistake. What we really want to be doing is keeping communities of interest and neighborhoods together. Mr. Steinley, commissioner from the Planning Commission, wrote a public comment earlier today that I think did a very good job of articulating what the law says, and it was really in accordance with what I was thinking. So in looking at, say, if we're looking at map C2, and we're looking at the boundary between districts 1 and 2, it's like Portola Avenue, I guess, is kind of the spine of that district. But honestly, the concentric circles that are around West Portola, to the west side of San Antonio, I don't think they really have an awful lot of commonality with the concerns of the streets around East Portola and Merritt, as opposed to, say, using Los Altos Avenue as a spine. I think that the area around Egan Junior High, Santa Rita, have a lot more in common with the area that's just to the north of Edith than they do to the communities that they're right now being linked with on the east side of San Antonio. I mean, it really seems to me that sort of North Los Altos triangle is a much more logical way to draw a map. And yes, it means that San Antonio would be used as a dividing line, at least partly, if not mostly. But I think that's where the neighborhood is. I think that's where the communities of interest are. I'm willing to go back to that, but before I do, I want to talk about districts 4 and 5. When I gave my comments about what I saw in District 4 on this map, and could I ask staff actually to put up districts 4 and 5 on map C2, just so they're up on the screen?
Which map?
Sorry.
Either C2 or F2A. Those are the maps where Grant Park and the Highlands are kept together. Thanks. Could you sort of zoom in on 4 and 5 on this map, please? So when I gave my comments about district number 4, number 1, I think I said something that's confusing to some people. I said I had a hard time justifying to myself how the area around Cristo Rey has anything to do with the area around Covington. And members of the public said, well, Covington isn't here. I was not clear in what I meant when I said that 2 weeks ago. What I meant was, does Cristo Rey have much in common with the area around Block? And of course, Covington is the major road up there. That's why I said Covington. So when I gave my comments, I was referring to the street Covington, not the school Covington. But I said I was really uncomfortable with the way this is drawn because while on the one hand, I love that Grant Park and Highlands are kept together, I hate that the area around Block is put together with Cristo Rey. How can I justify that? But I really spent a lot of time thinking about that. And when I sort of teased it out further, I think I came to the conclusion that, you know what? Cristo Rey, I think, really doesn't have a lot in common with the Highlands or Woodland, to be quite frank. I mean, yes, they're both in the southernmost part of the city, but Cristo Rey being on the other side of 280, I mean, it really is very unique, I think, in the needs of that community of interest really are very unique, and they don't, I think, necessarily tie to either districts 4 or 5. The Highlands area, however, does have, I think, a very strong connection to Loyola Corners. I know that Ms. Wheeler gave public testimony to that earlier this summer. And frankly, I think that the Loyola Corners neighborhood and the Block area neighborhood also have a lot, they have a strong interest in Loyola Corners. And when I stepped back and I started thinking of it that way, District 4 starts to look a lot more palatable to me. Now, let's sort of trace back where we've gone here. When we first started doing first started engaging in this exercise, there was a strong movement to try to keep residents who are in the Cupertino Union School District together. When it became apparent that in order to do that, part of the Highlands or part of Grant Park would have to be chopped off, suddenly the perspective changed. And I think we all really know what the motivation was, but at that point, there suddenly became a fierce competition between residents of Grant Park and residents of the Highland. Our neighborhood, if you have to cut off a chunk of one of the neighborhoods, it ought to be the other neighborhood. And that is exactly the type of division that all of us on this council dreaded seeing. We knew that it was going to come. The whole point of districting is to pit neighborhoods against neighborhood. But now we're suddenly in this battle of, no, keep my neighborhood together, take the other neighborhood and take a chunk off of it. Districts 4 and 5, the way that they're drawn on this map, it solves that problem for the Highlands and for Grant Park. Now, I had a conversation with a member of the public over the weekend who said, well, yeah, but in order to make District 5 work, you're now cutting into that Loyola neighborhood and sort of creeping up towards Block. And that's true. We are sort of cutting into that neighborhood. And the member of the public pointed out to me that, I understand that people from Grant Park and the Highlands have really been sending a lot of emails and they've been very vocal in their concerns, but it's not fair to penalize another neighborhood for their expense. And I think that there is logic in that statement, but at the same time, I also don't think that it's necessarily right to punish is not the right word, but to divide Grant Park or the Highlands because those were the loudest neighborhoods to say something. districts 4 and 5, the way that they're drawn here, I think that this is the best way to draw the southern part of the city. I do think it's important to keep the Highlands together. I do think it's important to keep Grant Park together. Grant Park is kept with the Oak neighborhood, which I think also makes sense. I don't like that Leola is cut up, but it's one or the other. Either Grant Park is going to get a notch taken off, or Leola is going to get a notch taken off. And I think that the best interests of the city are served with this map, as opposed to the map in two of the other maps that had all of the Highlands and Woodland Acres combined with most of Grant Park, but had a notch taken out of it. I think that this is superior. The only caveat that I would say, and I would vote for it either way, but the way that this map is drawn, Foothill Crossing is included in District 4. I would advocate for including Foothill Crossing in District 5. That would give a little more population to District 5 at the expense of 4, and 4 has more to give to 5. It also, more importantly, would mean that a major shopping district is included in District 5 more than just the Woodland Shopping Center. And since Leola Corners would be in District 4, I think it's logical that Foothill Crossing would be in District 5. But that I would not vote against this map because of that. That's just where I am. Okay, so those are my thoughts in the southern part of the city. There was a public comment at our last meeting which had something to the effect of, I really think we should not keep this particular neighborhood together because I remember the people there have high incomes or real property is worth more. It's not good to concentrate that. We ought to separate that. And I went back, I probably watched that comment 10 times, and each time I watched it, I disagreed more and more with it. That member of the public had identified a community of interest and was advocating to split the community of interest. That I have a real problem with that. And sort of taking what I learned in looking at District 4 and that one particular comment made me go back and take a look at the northern part of the city. Once upon a time, we were looking at maps that went, District 1 went from almost 280 all the way down to El Camino. And, you know, most of the council, a majority of the council was very uncomfortable with that, myself included. But now that I've gone back and really thought about what is a community of interest and the obligation we have not to split up communities of interest that we have, and since I was able to find myself comfortable with District 4 that we just looked at, I went back and revisited those maps that the council didn't want to go with. And you know, I think I said earlier this evening, I think Los Altos Avenue should be the spine of a neighborhood. And that neighborhood has a lot, is very closely tied with downtown. I think that Old Los Altos around University Avenue is also extremely closely tied to downtown. Now, the whole of the city, of course, downtown is important to the whole of the city. But I think those two neighborhoods in particular are probably the closest to it. So putting those neighborhoods together in kind of this long district that went almost from 280 up to El Camino, I'm actually going back and re-looking at it, and for the same reasons that I'm okay with going from Cristo Rey to Block, I'm okay with going from near 280 up to El Camino, because Old Los Altos and North Los Altos are two very clearly, I think, defined neighborhoods, and I think that they should be together. Now, the only way that this works, if there's support for that, is we start using major streets as the dividing line. And I know that we've had a lot of public comments saying we shouldn't do that. But, you know, major streets divide neighborhoods because they're major streets, right? I don't like the idea of having people on either side of San Antonio or either side of El Monte not in the same district, but it's going to happen somewhere. And it makes a lot more sense to me that that's where the dividing line is, as opposed to Portola or Pine. I think that we are doing more of a disservice to the community by dividing districts along the smaller streets than we are using the larger streets. Now, once I kind of came to the conclusion that I'm okay with having North Los Altos and Old Los Altos in one neighborhood, other good things started to happen, in my opinion. Looking at maps C2 and F2, there are lines that are drawn very close to Los Altos High School. One of the sets of maps, I think, has the line between 2 and 3 going down Avalon, and one of them actually has it going down Alicia. So, I mean, if we pick the map that's going down Alicia, I think that's C2. That means that the houses on Alicia that back up to the high school are in the same district as the high school, but people across the street are not in that district. I don't like that at all. But if all of North Los Altos is put into that one district along San Antonio, now you have all the streets that are around Los Altos High, Panchita, Los Niños, the ones that are south of Los Altos High. And you can have most of the streets, if not all of them, around Almond, going to the elementary school up to El Monte. You could have them all in one district as well. That's actually how the lines would have to be drawn. That makes a lot more sense to me than the maps that we're looking at now, which all have essentially 3 districts that are drawn pretty close to Los Altos High. So I know we're kind of coming full circle in what I've said, back to sort of where we started. And my apologies to staff who originally suggested that these are maybe the way that we should be thinking about things. But that's where I am right now. I'm okay with 4 and 5, where Grant Park and the Highlands are kept together. I would put Foothill Crossing with 5, not 4. On districts 1, 2, and 3, I think that those need to be reworked. And I think that North Los Altos to the west of San Antonio should be kept together from Edith all the way to El Camino. So that's where I am right now on maps. Yeah, I'll give you the floor.
I just wanted a quick comment, because I'm a visual person, and I think when we're talking about things, it'll be nice if we can have the maps or for the public as well to see, because, you know, when you say, oh, I'm talking about this street and stuff like that, it's hard for people to follow. So if we can put the maps up on the areas you're referring to and hone into those areas, like you're talking about 1 and 2 in those areas, it'll be good to reference the ones you're talking about. I think it'll be very helpful.
Okay, well, I was not referring to a particular map. I was saying why I didn't like the way that the maps that are in front of us. I was explaining why I didn't like the maps that are in front of us tonight. I'm happy to start drawing something, but there may be other maps that other council members want to refer to. So I don't want to start doing that until I hear from all the other council members.
But do we have our demographer here to help us do that? I want to make sure. I forgot to ask that earlier. And oh, okay, I was not aware of that. So it's good to know. Thank you. And then, you know, for me, because then you're referring to C2 and F2, and I think for the public it's helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Liang, since you have the floor, do you want to go ahead and give us your thoughts on?
I just want, it's a visual thing for me and how I think.
Okay, well, I'm done with my comments, so I'm asking if you want to share your comments.
No, not at this moment.
Okay, Councilmember Meadows.
Thank you, Mayor. I agreed with some of your points and principles, but I think I may have ended up in different spots than you. I'll start down at the south, where I am in agreement with you. Part of it is because, again, the principle about not dividing on big roads, and we steered away from that. I agree to some extent that that's a mistake. We have to divide on big roads, and it makes more sense. Like if you look at El Monte, there's a zip code division there. So, you know, in some of our maps, we forced changes off of El Monte, and it really makes a lot less sense than El Monte. But let me talk about the south first. I prefer the C2 and the F2A. Partly that is because I know that the maps that split off a piece of Grant Park, I used to live there, and I know how artificial that boundary is. Again, that's taking a small road and carving off something. So I do feel that C2 and F2A maintain an integrity of the neighborhoods. They're maybe defined a little differently. I appreciated your thought process around Cristo Rey, which is really kind of a standalone area of Los Altos. I remember when I discovered it was part of Los Altos when I was on Design Review Commission. I was actually kind of surprised by that. So I would support C2 and F2A. Then carrying along on the themes of the major roads, I actually favored F2A because it really uses El Monte as a divider line. I have concerns with anything that takes us back to the long map, because every single neighborhood within a mile and a half of downtown, no matter what direction, is affiliated, is connected, is attached to downtown. And so I still have trouble thinking about taking the long district from El Camino to 280 when you're going to be cutting off people that are literally just a few blocks away. And I haven't bought into that. So to me, F2A made more sense. It addressed Grant Park as a neighborhood. It addressed Highlands as a neighborhood. I hear Mr. Benenato's comments. I think to some extent, we've made an overemphasis on schools here, because really a lot of the issues that we're voting for and council members represent aren't really associated with the schools. So, but I do agree there's community of interest around there. But I actually thought F2A with the focus on El Monte made a lot more sense. So let's see. I think that's what I wanted to add. I just don't. I still cannot really grasp the rationale of an El Camino to 280 map. So I will end it there.
Thank you, Councilmember. Who'd like to go next? Councilmember Flagger.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for your comments. So let me start with the southern two districts. We talked about the look of the lines at the last meeting. The word gerrymandering was used. And so I'm actually happy where I think council is today, where they have recognized that if it makes sense to put neighborhoods together and to keep communities of interest together, that sometimes the lines are going to look a little awkward and squiggly like it does in order to keep the Highlands and Loyola Corners together. So I just want to make sure there's no double standard. Like, we're clearly doing it here. And so, it's something we've accepted, that the lines may not be straight lines or circles, where sometimes the lines will look a little awkward or odd. They're legally compliant. And sometimes that's what you really need to do to keep communities of interest. I have to say I can be convinced, but I always viewed the Highlands separate from Loyola Corners based on the issues that come before us as council. Two different communities, right? Even if a resident says she identifies with Loyola Corners, which I accept, I know there are residents in the Highlands who identify with the Rancho Shopping Center. I always viewed the Highlands as more aligned with the unincorporated county area, just the feel of the Highlands. I never viewed the Highlands as aligned or as a community of interest with Loyola Corners. I just want to put that on the record. But at least two council members tonight have indicated that they could see putting those two communities together, crossing Foothill. and I can listen to that and appreciate it. So then I want to go to the North Los Altos communities, and I want to start with that District 1 that we have talked about, and the 3 new map that's been in the public for at least 7 days, where it's no longer a long sliver, but that District 1 now is a little bit more rounded out. You know,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So this is the other map that was circulated tonight.
yes.
Would you mind if I had staff put it up on the,
Oh,
on the
that
screen?
would be very helpful.
What's the designation of the map?
This is District ID 254653, and on what we received tonight, it is named 3 new map 101024, probably 101024. Was this map in the packet?
It was previously known as F4.
There it is. So let me start with this new District 1, which isn't that long line alone anymore from El Camino to El Monte. So that's rounded out and looks, I think, a little bit more fuller, which addressed, I think, some of the concerns that were made at the last meeting. You know, just to address some concerns that were raised with regards to the initial draft of this District 1, about communities of interest. These neighborhoods surround the downtown area, but also have neighborhoods that support the downtown vibrancy. They patronize downtown. They very much identify with downtown. And as we think about going forward, where you're going to have an elected official representing these different districts, we want to make sure that within that district, we have elected officials being able to represent the different communities of interest within the district. So for example, if you have a district that includes downtown, but there are neighborhoods that are not supportive of the downtown vibrancy, the parks, you have to question whether or not those neighborhoods within that district really have the same interest in common. And I can tell you these neighborhoods that are in this District 1 with downtown, and I've spoken to many residents who live in these different neighborhoods. They support downtown. They support the vibrancy that's happening down there. They're also supportive of, look ahead 2 years, 4 years from now, supporting, if you have an elected official who's going to represent this district, they want to make sure that what is happening in downtown, the vibrancy, the development that we're all talking about, continues. And so they want to be part of that district to ensure those things happen, because they do support the downtown vibrancy and the plans we have for downtown. With regards to the claim that this district is made up of affluent communities, if you look at the data, there's so many more affluent pockets in other parts of Los Altos compared to this draft District 1. And I will also add that currently in District 1, this is where we have identified having a 100% affordable housing development, at least one. And that would be part of District 1. And so people really need to appreciate what District 1 includes. It includes different neighborhoods. It includes the downtown. It will include renters downtown. It will include a 100% affordable housing development. It will include a park downtown and things that the neighborhoods currently in District 1 in this draft would support. We also heard from at least one resident who said she wanted to make sure that both sides of San Antonio were part of the same district. So when you look at District 2, this green district, it covers both sides of San Antonio. We've heard from this resident many times saying she wants to make sure both sides of San Antonio are part of the same district. This accomplishes that. Also in District 2, these are the neighborhoods that surround the high school. And these neighborhoods share the same communities of interest when it relates to the traffic around the high school, the different street improvements that are happening, the impact of traffic coming in from El Camino and heading to the school, or from El Monte and heading to the school. This district includes all those neighborhoods that share those communities of interest. So again, District 2 makes sense for many reasons. District 1 makes sense for many reasons. I think District 3, to the point a public speaker made earlier, I actually think District 3 has rarely changed, right? You may take a neighborhood out in the north, take a neighborhood out in the southwest or east, but pretty much, we have rarely touched District 3. And so I would support a map that has some configuration similar to the map we're looking at on the board, with District 1, District 2, and District 3 configured in a manner that still meets the legal requirements and within the 10% deviation. And I would be comfortable with that, supporting keeping the Grant Park and the Highland community and the Loyola Corners together. So I could support a map that has the District 4 and 5 that Councilmember Meadows and the mayor talked about, why they now want to keep those two southern districts together. And I actually started mapping it on my laptop. I think there is a way to get District 1, District 2, and District 3 very close to what we're seeing on this board, and still get the Highlands, Loyola Corners, and Grant Park from, I think it's, what is your map? It's F2A or C2. I think we can get District 4 and 5 to remain as they are, as we see in F2A and C2, and reconfigure 1, 2, and 3 to be very similar to the map we're looking at on the board, and still be within the deviation. And I actually started working on that on my computer. I think we're close. I think we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Mayor, Councilmember Liang, who'd like to go next?
My favorite maps are F2 and C. And I know that that is not going to make people in Grant Park happy, but what I have experienced over the last month is that people in Grant Park have been activated and lobbied and canvassed, and they're submitting letters that have the same wording and were written by the same source. And while the volume of concern from Grant Park has been very high, the volumetric concern doesn't outweigh the concerns of any other neighborhood. And, we talked about school districts being a community of interest, and what we have done is we have created two southern districts that fuse Cupertino Unified School District and Los Altos School District, that fuse Fremont Unified High School District and Los Altos Mountain View High School District. So you have two southern districts that don't have anything in common except for proximity to a park. But I will say this. I am sensing from my colleagues a willingness to accommodate the Grant Park perversion, and I will go along with it if I'm the only one who sees it as a perversion. I could support the map that we were just discussing, even though I don't think it's the best map for the city. With F2 and C, Grant Park loses a small portion, right? So, however, the resulting district is all Cupertino Unified School District. There's a small portion of Cupertino Unified School District that would be attached to the district that has the other district that is an LASD district. But when it comes to things like bond measures, safe routes to school, they're traffic calming, parking enforcement. There are all kinds of issues that we deal with on a regular basis that really correlate to school boundaries. And Councilmember Meadows made a very good point more than once, wherein she noted that the school districts as jurisdictions, in a sense, fulfill some of that community of interest requirement because it gives those residents, a body that they can appeal to or vote for or address their grievances to with regard to the schools. But there are enough other issues that sort of correlate to these school boundaries that I actually think that keeping the Cupertino Unified School District in a cohesive district and giving the community members who identify with CUSD and FUHSD a very strong voice in their district has some merit. I don't mind dividing along big streets. I think, I sympathize with folks who say, well, gosh, I'm going to have the same interests as people on the other side of San Antonio. But, we have to deal with census blocks. They're divided by streets. We have to deal with neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are by definition divided by streets. And, having large streets as the major dividing lines, it's very rational. And when you talk to voters in a district and start talking about boundaries that make, lots of little 90-degree angles on little side streets, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you tell the residents, oh, well, your district goes to El Monte, they understand that. That makes sense. And anything we can do to help the voters understand and make sense of this and feel comfortable with it, I think is a good thing. And so I do think that dividing along these big streets has a lot of merit. But again, just to summarize, I think we're creating a perversion to accommodate the lobbying that has gone on in Grant Park. And it has more to do with the folks that are involved in the lobbying trying to cultivate political power or preserve political power. And it has nothing to do with what's good for the whole city.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Liang.
I liked some of the suggestions I'm hearing. I agree that 4 and 5 of F2A is a good recommendation for the southern portion of Los Altos. I think it's great when you have two representatives who's going to have like 50% of CUSD representation of each district, or a good chunk of portion of CUSD. I think it's great so they can understand the issues of CSD as well as understand the issues of the other school districts as well. So I think it's the recommendation that was brought forth by the demographer was a positive thing. And I think it addresses the concerns that many have. We also heard from people that do not live in Montclair, the Highlands or Grant neighborhood that also agreed with F2A. So I'm good with that. I'm hearing what Councilmember Flieger is saying about her recommendations. I recognize communities of interest in one that you may not have identified, but I have identified in one. And the communities of interest in one is all your senior living facilities, all in one.
You're well said.
Terraces, Bridge Des Moines, and also the one across the street here. So they're all located in one district. I do like the fact that the ones that the people with the schools' interests as well regarding Egan as well as Los Altos High will be grouped together. So I kind of, I wasn't thinking of that, but the recommendation, I can work with that. And, you know, recognizing that and seeing that, it's all about identifying communities of interest and working with that. So, you know, if we have the demographer here, like, or else you can share your map, I think it would be good to have that visual up so we can all see it and speak more to it, and then see how we can better tweak it as well. But I think we're getting there, and I like the suggestions we're making and working together to make this happen.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. All right, we're going to go ahead and put up on the screen.
Councilmember Meadows has her hand up.
Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Meadows.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add, having listened to all the comments, and I realize I spoke already, but I had not really looked at that map. I didn't know, like Councilmember Liang, I didn't know what that was, where it came from. Listening to Councilmember Fliger's explanation about that map, I do think it addressed some of my concerns with some of the earlier iterations. I still think there's some issues, but I am willing to be open to looking at it to see if we can work with it. So I did want to throw that in before you take us to the next step, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, can we put up, what is it, well, it's not a new map.
Merged, it's a merger of.
Okay.
So, yeah, so based on the conversation the council's having, I put together this
All right,
map.
let's focus on districts 1, 2, and 3, please. So what I don't like about this map is that it keeps San Antonio together at the expense of Los Altos Avenue, Mount Hamilton, and Almond. I don't know why we would want to do that. I don't think that the community of interest on either side of San Antonio justifies splitting Los Altos Avenue, Mount Hamilton, and Almond. I would be far more comfortable with this map if District 1 was pushed out towards San Antonio, and then District 2 went further south, so that it would first of all, if it went further south, it would not border, it wouldn't go on Almond Avenue, which means that it wouldn't cut the southern neighborhood adjacent to Almond Avenue the southern part of Almond Avenue would not be cut off from the high school. It would also let it would let Almond Avenue and Los Altos Avenue both kind of act as spines. And you can even push District 2 out towards El Monte, and then you'd be able to look at Almond Avenue all the way from the high school to the elementary school. And I think that makes a ton of sense, because you've got a lot of traffic on Almond Avenue around pickup and drop-off. Now, of course, there's more traffic along San Antonio every day, but San Antonio is an arterial. I mean, you don't have the residences around it. I think that the traffic concerns are not the same. So if one were to be pushed out towards San Antonio and 2 were to go further south and further east, now I think you'd be cooking with gas. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I'd have to see it, Mayor.
Yeah, I gotta see it. I don't understand.
What don't you understand?
I think I can clarify, Mayor.
Sure.
My interpretation of what the mayor is saying is that if we take the yellow portion to the west of San Antonio and make that blue, and then take the blue portion to the east of San Antonio and make that yellow, that will pretty much accomplish what he's asking for.
Could we do it?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Oh, perfect. Because we have to stay within the 10% deviation.
Did you say all the way south of the blue?
Well, I
Just
mean,
keep
what
going.
if,
Just keep going until you get the population
and
number.
maybe also east towards El Monte. Yeah.
Well, this is back to that spine that we rejected, or at least I rejected before, so I don't like this direction.
So Councilmember Meadows, you're more comfortable with drawing it along Los Altos Avenue, Mount Hamilton, and Almond?
Yes.
Okay. I think we do. All right, Councilmember Meadows, you support this map?
I believe, sorry, I think so. I mean, I'd like to maybe zoom in a little bit because there are various, again, my concern with this principle is that you take, and I don't know where DeMartini's hits, but the neighborhoods around DeMartini's are very much downtown neighborhoods, and I think they're cut off on this, and so I don't know what sort of, teasing that we can do with this principle.
On this map, DeMartini's is in the blue.
Right, and so that means that the yellow neighborhoods just north of DeMartini's are essentially not considered part of downtown because we're extending it downtown in blue all the way up to El Camino. So I don't think that's, to me, this is what the problem I've had when we looked at it when Councilmember Fliger was talking. I thought that there was more that was captured here. I just think it's very artificial to have places that are 2 blocks away from downtown be not associated with that district.
Vice Mayor, do you have any thoughts on this versus the other maps we've been looking at?
I agree with Councilmember Meadows. I don't think it makes any sense to have a neighborhood on El Camino, part of the same district as downtown, and have a neighborhood that's 2 blocks from downtown, not part of that district.
Okay, Councilmember Fliger, you'd like to respond?
I do. Can you clarify what area you're referring to as part of downtown that's not included in the blue district? Because how I view D2 right now, it's really neighborhoods that are around the high school.
No, I'm talking about Mount Hamilton, Hamilton Court, Garland, Coronado. Everything that's brown right now, where that hand was. Those neighborhoods are very much part of downtown. I know there's trade-offs. I'm open to discussing them, but I just really see that a street that's streets that are basically one off of Edith are just not in the downtown district.
And again, it depends on how you view it, because I see them as being part of the high school community because they're across the street on San Antonio Road from the high school. They're directly impacted by the kids biking on that cycle track. Like, I actually identify those neighborhoods on Sylvian Way, Coronado Avenue, Yerba Buena Avenue as part of the San Antonio Road high school traffic and community.
Well, I mean, but they're the down. You can say that, which is fine, and it's true. But they are the downtown community. How many crosswalks are there on East Edith for the people on that side of the road to get to downtown? There's like 2 or 3 crosswalks along that stretch between San Antonio and Foothill for those people to cross over to downtown. I'm just saying, I think, to me, this is a big sticking point.
And I think it's how the map is, what are they called, the census tracts, because the blue zone or District 1 goes from Edith. It actually, what is that? It's Mount Hamilton. So Mount Hamilton is the street that divides. So Mount Hamilton Street is part of the blue zone. And so there's this huge area with Garland Way, Hamilton Court, Cherry Avenue, that it's really hard to split that up. And for me, that fits better into District 2 with what happens in the high school. There are kids who cut through this District 2 to get to the high school. So I view all of this yellow district as part of the high school traffic, the high school community, even though I know it's close to the downtown. But for me, once you cross Mount Hamilton and you're looking in that broader area, it's really part of the high school community and what happens there every morning and every afternoon, that I think that builds a community of interest with people concerned about traffic, safety, and all the other issues there.
I don't know. I'll let my colleagues speak.
I mean, the argument that you're making, Nisa, is that the bulk of Los Altos Avenue has more of a relationship to and in common and is a community of interest with the high school than is Merrill, Gordon, Angela, or even Almond Avenue right across the street from the high school. And I'm having a hard time with that.
So how would you divide the line and still stay within the deviation?
Well, again, I think Los Altos Avenue ought to be a spine.
So it is, right?
Ought to be the spine, ought to be in one district on either side of it.
Okay, so to have John draw the line, because I'm not opposed to that. My concern is,
Well, no, he started drawing it, but Councilmember Meadows did not like it. I know the vice mayor did not like it. And I thought that neither you or Councilmember Liang liked it either. So if there isn't at least one other person, let alone two, then I don't know if it's worthwhile even drawing it. We can just to look at it, but for that to work, it's gonna affect it. Essentially, it's having. Essentially, I'm suggesting that we have districts that sort of coordinate around downtown, as opposed to coordinating around the high school.
so I would be fine with that. So you want to ask John to redraw the line?
So, wait. Councilmember Meadows, I think you have that Mount Hamilton block, that section, right? So if that became blue and then more of the other side on the right became more yellow, yes. Is that then address your concerns? And I think,
Are we still within the number?
yeah, you know what I'm saying? We can take.
John is doing it.
Yeah, we ended up with a blue and a yellow that are almost identical.
Yeah. It's going to be within 10%. I don't think it's a problem.
Like you can.
So that captures the south of Almond, like I think the mayor was talking about.
Like you can get one more block.
And it doesn't have to be exact, Lynette. It's within
Yeah.
10%.
Okay,
It's
okay.
within
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah, but I was just trying to address the concerns everybody has. You know what I'm saying?
No. Which sliver?
That it looks like a sliver. That just the map has to be drawn further over.
But if
Can
we
you
could
please scroll the map so that we see more of the east?
take this?
No, don't zoom
square,
out.
Would that reduce it? Would that help? If you take that one square and make it yellow?
Can we make?
We don't need to. It's all within the
Okay,
same.
okay.
If they want to, it's fine, but.
Okay,
we don't need to.
okay. Okay, but does that address our concern?
If there were three other votes that like this map, I would probably support it. I don't know that I want to be the third and rather than the fourth.
I don't love it, but I would support this map.
Can we zoom out? I've kind of lost the big picture here on these. So it looks better, I think. Okay.
Mayor, Mayor,
Yes.
I was just going to say that our consulting demographer, Paul Mitchell, is on. If you would like to also consult with him whether or not this map complies with the Fair Maps Act.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't we take a 10-minute recess? Paul can come in. He can take a look at the numbers on this, and then that should give him time to prepare to advise us on it. In the meantime, can we just leave it up on the screen so people can look at it? No, you can't do that. We have to redraw this map tomorrow at the council meeting.
I would still put
that Mr. Mitchell is now with us. So I think the threshold question at this point for Mr. Mitchell is whether this, the map that we are looking at on our screen right now is compliant with the CVRA.
Yes, thanks for having me. This is Paul Mitchell with Redistricting Partners. Yes, based on the objective measures, contiguous within the 10% deviation, so equal population, compactness, there could be kind of questions a little bit about, we talked about the districts in the South, and we tried to, I think in the drafting that we did, to make sure that they were contiguous there and compact. And so I think in all those criteria, it is compliant. The remaining criteria are more subjective. So the conversation you've been having around what communities of interest are being considered, talking, I think, at length about things like, are we going to consider where a high school is, or we consider more where the downtown is? Those kind of concerns are the things that will arm the attorneys with the ability to be able to defend this under the Fair Maps Act criteria regarding communities of interest, and allow us to write a final report on a plan that identifies what communities of interest were considered, and if they were divided, how and why.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will look to my colleagues. Does anyone want to propose any tweaks between the borders of the blue district and the yellow district? Does anyone want to propose any tweaks between yellow and dark green? Between blue and dark green? Okay.
So, Mayor, you probably
Yeah.
can't see, I have my hand up, and
Thank you.
I'm not proposing, but I do want to ask, there's a lot of, between the blue and the dark green, there's sort of some weird lines. I'm sure there's maybe some census blocks to do with it, or, so I just wondered why it was, if there's a rationale for that, or was it just around the numbers driving it?
So I know, for instance, the census block that sort of curves around. Yes, that one. That's one census block. That's where Gordon turns, and there's actually a dead end, but you can walk over onto Lyell. If that were made a part of blue, would that change anything?
It would take it outside of the 10% deviation.
Okay, so that couldn't be made blue without other changes.
Okay.
Vice
That
Mayor,
makes-
you have a different opinion?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Sally, any other thoughts on that?
I don't see anything that would likely, it's all going to throw it over if you take it. I mean, that was one of the things that I liked about F2A, is it sort of had a neat, tidy line along El Monte and didn't have all this jaggedy stuff. But I guess this can make sense.
Okay. Does anyone have any concerns or questions about the border between light green and dark? Actually, I do. At a previous meeting, we had said we wanted to keep Mackenzie in with District 3. And I'm just curious if we put Mackenzie, if we put that block into the dark green, is that still compliant? Probably not.
Take some of the dark green and give it to the blue.
No, to the yellow. It would have to be to the yellow.
No, you can't put that in with the central district. It just has too much population.
Okay, thank you. You go ahead and put it back in the light green. Does any other council member have questions about the border between light green and dark green? Okay, do any council members have questions about the border between, I guess it's magenta and light green?
Yeah.
And
Flop Foothill crossing over while we're at it. And then you'll actually even out the population more.
So you want Foothill Crossing in with Highlands?
Oh, no.
No,
Okay, with Grant Park, okay.
I would take either, the square that's,
Mike,
there's a little square right off of Fremont Avenue. No, not that one. To the left bottom, that square. Oh, wait, you had it there. Yeah, and make that green. Or either you can make that,
So what's your logic for having Lisa split as opposed to Fremont and Oakhurst?
Fremont and Oakhurst. Well, we could keep that back there, and then you can make this one green if you want. The Covington, by Covington.
Carmel Terrace, that,
Yeah, Carmel Terrace, and make that green.
yeah.
Because we took the Foothill Crossing.
So
and
that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, that would work better.
And I mean, clearly we're more compliant this
Yeah.
way, yeah.
Yeah,
Carmel Terrace is a block neighborhood. Carmel Terrace is where the back entrance to.
yeah.
Carmel Terrace is where the back entrance to Block School is, and actually where probably more than 50% of parents drop off.
Yeah, then keep that together.
Okay, so I think that, Sally, do you have any objection to that?
No, that looks like it makes a lot of sense.
And do you have any objection to putting Foothill Crossing with Grant Park?
No, don't think so.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about this map?
I do want to look at the blue, yellow, green intersection up there again one more time. Yeah. Okay, I don't see anything I can suggest. I mean, it's messy there. It doesn't, again, as a number of us have said this evening, that we prefer, after moving away from major roads as divider lines, we now realize that maybe it was better, and this is using some really strange combination of roads to divide up through there. But I'm not sure that it, I mean, this map seems pretty well balanced, so maybe that's the price we pay.
All right, then I will look to my colleagues. Does anyone have any suggestions they want to make on this map? Or would you like to propose a different map? Okay, then here's what we're going to do moving forward. Tomorrow, we will redraw this same map because we cannot consider what we did tonight tomorrow. But we can redraw it tomorrow, give it a new name, and then we can continue our discussion after we've all had a day to think about it. I will ask staff, can this map be saved and let us and the public know where we can look at it if we want to?
Yeah, so I will save it, and then it should show up on the city's website if you click on, sorry, I need to.
Do you want to give me a name for it so I can produce it as a full PDF?
How about just October 21, 2024 special meeting?
But for the, you don't want to use the F or like a G or something like that?
No.
We could say
See,
special
what,
meeting
Zed?
map. The October 21st, 2024 special meeting map.
So if councilor members of the public go to the city's districting website and scroll down to the district-based elections mapping tool and click onto the districtor and then scroll down, you will be able to find it as the first map.
But don't we need to publish, oh, no, okay, we can't publish it till tomorrow.
So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, we'll draw a new map, either this exact one or we can make changes to it. It will then be published ASAP on the city's website. So if it can be published tomorrow night, great. If it can't be published till Wednesday morning, okay. I'm going to call a special meeting for Wednesday, October 30th. I'd like to have a closed session at 6:30, and we'll start the special meeting at 7. And then at the special meeting, we can adopt an urgency ordinance. We will need 4 votes in order to pass the urgency ordinance. If we do not have 4 votes on the 30th, we're not going to get any maps adopted before the end of the month. If we do have 4 votes for an urgency ordinance on the 30th, I think then on November 12th, are we also going to have a regular ordinance? So we'll have a regular ordinance with the same map, and we would have the second reading for that on consent on December 5th, I guess.
Yeah. Because we do this
belts and
urgency,
suspenders.
yeah, belt and suspenders.
Okay. So that's what we're looking at. If we don't have 4 votes on October 30th, then we're going to have to call more meetings into November. Are there any questions about process or anything else? Councilmember Liang.
So, Mr. Mitchell, in your opinion, this would meet all the criterias, and what would, is there anything you may feel that may be problematic at what you see here that we should be aware of? Otherwise, it's all good.
So when we talk about objective measures, things you can actually see or count, equal population, contiguous, compact, those are all fine. The attorneys will have to take note of the community of interest discussion. We'll have to create a document defining what communities of interest were considered. But as long as the attorneys have on record you talking about how this map was drawn in a way to balance the Fair Maps Act criteria and protect communities of interest, then it's all fine.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that.
Okay, anything from staff or council? Then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.